What up, Ben?
What's up, buddy? Long
It's Friday.
time. Is it?
I'm really glad it's Friday.
Good God, I bet you are. You guys have had a long week, man.
It was a long week. We got to experience the best airport traffic jam in the world, apparently.
You
Everyone.
did coming out of Houston for sure, man.
Yeah, we flew to DC and I just barely missed a 4-hour line because I got to the airport at 3 in the morning, basically. And after that, it was a huge line. And everyone else decided, well, I better get there at like 6 hours before my flight, 8 hours before my flight.
God, I was super worried about y'all flying out last week, and I was real worried about Austin, but the lines here, I guess, for South by were terrible. And then once South by kind of died out and spring break died out, it wasn't as bad. But man, y'all got hit hard in Houston.
We don't even have spring break crowds. I don't know what happened.
I know. Well, I think I read something online that like 40% or 50% of the TSA agents called out there. So it was like the largest call out and the largest like no shows of all airports. So I think that was the problem.
Well, we also have our largest oil and technology conference this like last week. And so like people from all over the world, I think like 40,000 people come to Houston for this conference.
Well, there you
It's
go,
great.
man.
Yeah. It's almost
Yeah.
as big as OTC.
Wow, dude. Yeah. I haven't been to any of those since I went out to West Texas to do the Permian Basin expo out there. That was years and years ago. So
Yeah, I think they're a little different, but not much.
yeah. No, I should have come down, man. I should have gone there while you were in DC and canvassed for some new business.
Yeah, you could have hung out with OGGN. Shout out
I know.
them.
I'm sure they were doing a podcast, huh? The whole time.
Our buddies at Halliburton.
Yeah, that'd been cool. Well, look, I want to talk a little bit about. I don't want to talk about the clients, but I want to talk about the last two gigs that we did because they were super interesting. And we haven't been on in a long time, so everybody who, if anybody watches, is probably like, "Where these guys been?" But it's been this first quarter's been really busy, and we just haven't had a ton of time to get back online and do this stuff. There's been a lot of travel gigs. But the last two in specific were pretty interesting for a number of reasons. And I had some specific things that I wanted to talk about that pertain to the spaces that those were held in, like, a hotel conference room versus a meeting room when you're doing a hybrid event or when you're doing a production like this. And what it means to produce from those spaces or what it means to create from those spaces and what your options are and like why it's not always the best to just go with what's there and why it may be okay to go with what's there. But then you had some really good ideas on just how those people were utilizing the events themselves as communication tools that we should probably talk about first.
Okay, yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah, so I was really struck. The last two we did, one was for a really large organization in Texas, and it kind of gathers all of these disparate groups in regards to water and brings them together. And so there's environmental groups, there's industry groups. I mean, federal representation and state representation was there too.
Right.
And somehow it builds a consensus from all of these people that have different points of view and helps propel them in a really positive direction, I think, for the state of Texas. They're all behind water use. And so it helps make that a bigger issue and at the forefront of the state's consciousness. And I thought that was just it's a really smart way to run an organization and to like, I'm struck all the time by how hard it is to build consensus in large groups.
Yeah, and I think the water thing though is a perfect example of that too, because it's like you have if you break it into political factions, you've got right-leaning landowner rights kind of people that are just all about like, yeah, don't mess with my land, don't mess with my water. Then you've got the more liberal side of it where they're like, hey, we got to conserve this stuff. And it's like those definitely intersect and meet in the middle where they're like, they all are. It's a shared goal. And they do a really good job of putting on those events. And I think they do a really good job of planning out their content and their speakers. And that is one that we've only been working with them for, I guess a year now. We're in our second year with them. And I think it really helped them up their game. And I got glowing feedback on you guys on site from them. They were very excited about the job that you did there and how good everything looked and being able to kind of remove the burden of the technology from them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and I think it also like is a good example of investing, in good production means that people walk away thinking about what's said, and what having those conversations. There's a lot of conversations outside of the ballrooms
Yeah,
and outside of the meeting rooms where people were talking and collaborate. Like, it seems like they're making genuine connections
sure.
instead of complaining like, "Oh,
Yeah.
man, that was a huge problem. That was a big deal,"
Yeah.
which I've heard that they had in the past.
For sure. Or trying to, even the presenters, like if you can't focus on the content that you're supposed to be speaking about because you're so worried about feedback in the microphone or your clicker not working or how you look on camera, like how are you going to present that material? And so I definitely want to get into that stuff because I have some thoughts on that
Yeah.
further down the road here. But the second one, you guys flew out to DC. This was a fly gig. You went and set up in like a very corporate environment, a brand new conference room that had built out with a bunch of brand new technology, and
Yep.
basically essentially did
Had
a
never
town
been
hall.
tested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
none of that equipment. So we kind of forewent using any of that stuff, and brought our own setup, which I
Yep.
kind of had to fight for a little bit, but I think it
I'm
worked out
glad
for
you
the
did.
best.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
showed up and we tried to utilize some of the technology, but the some of the encoders that they had were not encoding video properly. And so it was instead of playing back at like a normal frame rate, it was like
yeah,
10 frames a second. And
yeah.
so it would have made that video unusable. And there was a pretty sizable delay that was drifting,
Just
which
running through the system.
yeah, and so it would go between like about half a second to a second and a half, which meant we couldn't have done any
Gosh.
video playback. And they
Right.
did have at least one really important video to play back.
Yeah.
Um, and then also the outputs to the TVs weren't in sync necessarily. There was like a little bit of delay between them. And
Sure.
so they actually had to bring a guy out to look at that, but he came out. They were doing the testing while like day of the event, like up until we started the event. And
Nerve
then
wracking.
yeah, so I was like, well, if we would have tried to utilize that gear set, it would have not been a solid it wouldn't have been a good production.
Yeah, and that's their CEO is not a guy that is, you're gonna be able to just like be, oh, sorry, dude, like sorry it didn't work out. Like that's not the guy to do that with. Like
I don't think it's any like no CEO
yeah,
is gonna be okay.
fair. Fair. That's fair. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not many CEOs to be like, whatever. But that one was cool because that was the way that they're utilizing broadcast and the way they're utilizing video production is basically to reach this, like, I don't know, it's 2,000 people. Like they can't get them all in
All
one
of their
space. Yeah.
no, they have offices all over the US
Yeah. All over the world. I was
and
watching the servers.
that's true. But they have associates all over the world.
Yeah.
They don't have offices for everybody. Most
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
work from home exclusively.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no way to get everybody unless you wanted to fly everybody into
Yeah. Crazy.
which would be so expensive.
Yeah. But I was struck by the quality of that. I wonder if they would let us post. They probably won't because it's their stuff. Maybe we can find some screenshots, but I was absolutely struck by the quality of the broadcast from this end because I was here in Austin and I was just watching the servers because they had some server issues on there and with some firewall stuff last time. I've been working with their IT team to make sure we could overcome that stuff. So I was watching that, making sure we had backups that we could deploy, and it looked so good. Like you would not have known that was not done either in a professional studio or on a massive stage somewhere with huge like rigged lighting and truss and everything. But it was y'all in a conference room with some pipe and drape, some uplights, a couple of LEDs that you hung from the ceiling, some good camera and lensing, great audio, and it looked phenomenal.
Well, that's what we were able to do. It's great.
No, it was awesome. And I was
Yeah.
getting like all those guys were blowing me up on text. Like they couldn't believe it, how good it looked and how awesome everything was. So I was like, the fact that you were able to fly with all that gear and then we were able to kind of just supplement with some small rentals on the ground for the budget that was done for was really, really impressive. So it was, that's a great case study. And I think that we need to like get all the guys on at some point because I wasn't there on site with you, but I was doing all the pre-work on it. So I'd like to go through from the beginning to the post-production process of like
Yeah, I mean, big
what those
shout out to
conversations were.
Nate because he handled a lot of pre-production
Yeah.
and making sure that we had all the right rentals.
Yeah.
And but Brandon's so good with system architecture. Like
Yes.
you get up there and I don't really understand fully how he's rigged out these laptops. It seems like he's like Frankenstein this system together and it's awesome, but I don't know who else could recreate that.
Nah, I don't know. I mean, it's we give him shit about the PC laptops, because everybody's wanting to move over to Mac. But on vMix and the way that he's got this stuff built out, especially now that we're all NDI, like 100% with the network architecture in place, is pretty impressive. And it's super robust and it drops all the latency and makes everything work really well. And it's so nice that we can anticipate problems before they hit the server, and then we've got ways to like mitigate all these issues. So this is the kind of stuff I want to get into, because look, both these events I think are like key kind of like case studies for why it's so important to hire professionals to do this kind of stuff, specifically hybrid broadcasts or broadcasts in general, when you're getting your message out. Because the first one, the water one, anybody watching that or anybody in that room, who was there, because they didn't actually broadcast, but anybody who's in that room, whether you like it or not, they're judging everything that's happening in that room. They're judging whether there's feedback. They're judging if the screens and projectors work. They're judging how it looks. You may
Hmm.
think that they don't care and they're only there for the content, but that's just simply not the truth. Same for this other one where it's broadcast out. If it looks like crap and it's from some meeting room with like weird latency and echoes and whatever, and you're an
Yeah.
employee and they're telling you about their earnings and telling you about what they're going to do for you, and you're like, what kind of cut rate company am I working for if it doesn't work right? So like I get this a lot from people. They're like, well, our constituents don't really care that much about this, so we just kind of do it in Zoom. Or yeah, our employees don't, they're used to us just doing it this way. And it's like, okay, that's fair. And if
Hmm.
you're at a point where you have to make those cuts specifically, but why would you ever choose to do that when for such a small increase in budget, you can have something that completely elevates it? It just makes you look so much more professional and so much more like you care about what's going on.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I mean, the other thing is like for the association meeting, they had someone from the federal government there,
yeah,
who, and they had someone from the Army Corps of Engineers, like one of the lieutenant generals, I think. So two really high profile speakers. And it's hard to get high profile speakers to come back if they have a bad experience,
for
and
sure.
they talk to each other. Like, the person from those two really, really high profile people are gonna be like, "Oh, I had a good experience or I had a bad experience." And that informs whether other people at their same stature will come back or not. And so it's
For
hard
sure.
to build up momentum if you have even like, 1 or 2 bad experiences, which is like the same for any business. If we have a bad production and those people, A, those people will never hire us again, and B, all of their associate, like anybody they talk to will be like, "Ooh," like they'll be like, "I didn't have a really good experience. I wouldn't hire them."
For
You know?
sure.
And so you gotta each one's important.
Each one's important. And this I think this leads into the second point I want to talk about is that um the biggest pushback I get is that like a lot of times people be like, oh well, there's AV on site or they've already got stuff in the room. This was very true for this new space that was built out for this corporate client. They have all these cameras. I mean, God knows what they spend, hundreds of thousands, I'm sure, on that. Um, and then in the hotels typically always have built-in stuff. Maybe they have built-in screens, maybe they have built-in projectors, maybe they have built-in speakers, but that stuff is designed typically, especially at the hotel level, for amplification. It's not designed for broadcast. It's like, let's make it louder and make sure everybody can see, but you're not optimizing it for broadcast or for quality. Same thing
Yeah.
with those rooms. It's like a meeting. Let's make sure everyone can see and hear, but not necessarily optimizing it for like production quality or for it to look really good or for whatever.
Yeah, for example, it was a meeting room that had 4 cameras in it, and it sounds really awesome, but the 4 cameras were in the 4 corners of the room. So that, like, if you were, I guess, teaching a class or if you were,
Yeah,
having a round table, you could catch every single person that's there. But none of those camera positions would have allowed us to make sure that the people on stage looked good, you know? They were
right.
kind of high up. They were about, 8 feet h the camera
Because they're on
angles.
the ceiling, mounted from the
Yeah,
ceiling. Yeah,
yeah, so hanging down, so, like, it would have been a pretty weird angle shooting down, and, no real way to add in lights at that point because the way that they were would have, we wouldn't have had a lot of space to hang the lights, and I
right.
don't know, like, they all had zoom, so you coulda kinda zoomed in on people, but
Sure.
it would have been like a weird high angle zoom in or a weird
No, it's
from the
like
back of the room high angle.
I feel like this is such an important topic that gets overlooked so often, but it's like there are broadcast PTZ cameras. There's tons of them. They've been in use forever. They're all over the place. There are broadcast PTZ cameras, but most meeting room cameras or most meeting cameras that are put in these spaces like this are not broadcast cameras. It's just not. They're not. It's not what they're meant for. The sensors aren't the same. The way that they move is pretty unnatural when you're watching like the pans and when they're tilting or making any kind of camera movements. It's just not the same thing. And it's if people don't know the difference, they still know something's going on and it doesn't look quite right. Because can you imagine watching like a TED talk or like watching, I mean, I'm giving you these big examples or like the Emmys or the Grammys, and they're all on a bunch of crazy cameras hanging from the ceiling, just whittling around? Like, there's no fucking way, man.
Yeah.
It's
No.
just not this. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, in both of those examples, they spend a lot of time and effort planning out their production. So
I know.
it's
So
like,
let's talk this.
and
You
both of those, that's a good example because both of those do a really good job of creating a lot of awareness for their different areas of focus, music,
yeah,
film.
for sure.
And everyone, like everyone's talking, Grammys or the Emmy or the Oscars just happened. Everyone
Yeah.
was talking about all of the movies,
Yeah.
so gets people to go see what otherwise might be a dead medium.
So turn your event into the Oscars is what we're telling you, people. Up your budgets. No. But look, this is perfect because you hit on this a little bit about getting people to look good on stage, but this is something that has taken me actually embarrassingly. I hate to even admit this because for the longest time we just kind of assumed like, okay, we're in these conference rooms. It is what it is. Clients don't have budget for lighting. We're just gonna have to work with it. Bump the gain up on the camera. Let's figure something out. Let's do it. We've kind of started pushing people a little bit harder now, but I have come to realize that lighting is like the silent killer on all of these things. If you can't figure out a way to get people decently lit, it really your production really suffers. And I know that's super elementary and I get it, but it is something that gets overlooked a lot. They're like, "Oh, just turn the lights up in the room." Cool. Well, if you're at an event, a conference or whatever, and you've got the lights at 100% in the ballroom so that your cameras look good, what does that mean for your attendees? They're just like sitting in a like, they all have headaches by the end of the day because they're in this fully lit ballroom for 8 hours trying to look at a
Yeah,
stage, and then your projectors are too dim, and then whatever. But most clients can't afford truss and rigging and all this crazy stuff for 3 days to do their nonprofit event. So you got to figure out a way to get some decent lighting in. And y'all did a really good job at both of those events. The water one, especially just by manipulating the lights in the room, and then having some good backlighting and ambient lighting to really draw the attention to the stage. And then this one, I don't even know what you guys did because I didn't see that rental order until today. And I saw pictures and you had stuff rigged from the drop ceilings. What was going on there?
yeah. I mean, we rented 3 small Fresnel lights that we could hang from the ceiling that we could fly with. It's like a light kit that's kind of hard to rent because it's like rental kits are usually like much larger lights.
Right.
And then the rental house that we were using did have a couple of lights we could utilize as backlights, and I think you can see it in a couple of the shots when we go really wide.
Well, yeah, I
Uh,
saw those. Yeah.
and we were doing that to because it's a kind of a small space, so to separate the speakers from the drape, So I wanted to make sure we had light across their shoulders that was a slightly different color temperature from the front fill. And then using those Fresnels, we were able to come in and just create like a wash over where we thought people would be or where we had people sitting. And so it was nice, yeah, because we could lower the lights in the room. It made it feel like an event when you walked in.
Right.
And because it had a drop ceiling that we were able to utilize and hang pretty easily. We didn't have to get like a lot of times in big ballrooms, you'd have to get a
A
scissor lift
lift.
or
Yeah.
something to get up there. But this was just like a small ladder that was like 2 steps up and you could be at the ceiling.
And
And then
you clipped them into the drop ceiling?
yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
and then ran all the power up through the drop ceiling as well,
Yeah,
so
I saw the pic. I'll send you the pictures that Nate took. You should cut some of those into this video to see because is super clean setup and it looked great. And then maybe we could pull a few stills from the video itself and show them because again, like I was just really taken aback by the quality overall, and I think that that lighting had a lot to do with it. I mean, bringing nice cameras and lensing was great, but the lighting was amazing, and it made such a big difference in that space. And then all the images I saw from the water conference too, and that's one thing that they always say to me too, is that that's really up to their game, just for them having like the accent lighting, which is something that they've never done before. They always just kind of, it's whatever, no pipe and drape,
Yeah,
whatever, hotel wall backdrop, and somebody on the stage. Well, you just throw up 40 feet of pipe and drape and light it, and then all of a sudden now you're at an event.
it looks so nice compared to having that like conference yellow back wall or like whatever the gray is that they have for their wallpaper.
Yeah. But it's just, you go to the hotel and you bid that out and they want, $5,000 a day for the drape and whatever they charge you for the light kit. So this was something else that I know y'all had some issues with the audio in the room from the system that was built there. So we deployed our own audio, which we brought our own audio for in room. But this is something that often gets overlooked too when you're talking about those rooms, and that at the end of the day, especially specifically for broadcast, the audio, I would argue, is probably more important than the video. Because if you've got bad audio, like you're done, you're toast. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter how good the video is.
I agree with you. At the end of the day, like all of these things, if there's audio, that's going to be the most important thing because that's how it's a communication tool. And not many of these things are like visual mediums
Yeah.
completely, unless
Yeah.
you have like an amazingly shot
Sure.
film.
Which still has
But
to have decent audio because it still would suck.
yeah.
No, but
Uh,
I think about that all the time because I think about how much money we put into our microphones and to making sure that we've got the mixers, that we're using the right stuff, that we're not just bringing out old analog gear or like cut rate digital stuff. Like we're spending money on that stuff for these conferences, and it makes such a difference making sure that you've got robust audio and that it sounds really good, because it's just, without that, and also for like the in-person too. It's like you have great projectors, and you have these beautiful images where all their PowerPoints look awesome, but you can't keep the feedback under control because you're using the house speakers that are right above the stage that are blowing the lav mics up the whole time. It's just not great.
yeah, I've been to a couple of conferences this year as an attendee actually, and that's one thing that a lot of the time they don't even have an audio person in there, and
Yeah.
so the
So
hotel
frustrating.
set up the audio, the mics are live the whole time, so it's just a little noisier if people forget to turn them off. Um, and then when people start talking and it's different voices, like if you have an audio person there, they're writing the levels and adjusting the EQ for each
That's
speaker in
right.
each segment.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you get like sort of a really basic EQ. And
Yeah.
for someone with a deeper voice like us, it can really rumble in the room and it's like kind of painful. And if someone has like a very feminine voice, it's like in the higher octave or higher ranges, it just like it gets distorted as well. And
Yeah.
you're just like,
No.
oh man, I mean, I know that, like, in one of the events, I actually had to, like, walk back there because I knew the people running it, and I kind of, like, helped them out and adjust a little bit, and I was like, what am I doing?"
My wife will text me from stuff because she goes to a lot of these, and she'll text me. She's like, "Oh my God, what you got to come. Like, this is the worst ever." And I'm like, well, that's just, you know, people don't put a ton of stock in that stuff. And we actually have, I mean, there was a client, a big one that we have every year, that we have our techs in the room that are running video and broadcast, and then they just drop the mixers and they go set them. But we ended up having to run them because none of our guys are just going to sit there and not fix it.
Yeah.
And now we ask them to have those rooms teched. If it's not going to be us doing it, like if we can't bring our own audio techs, then they need to provide an audio tech, because it's huge. The audio component's so big. But this is the other portion of that to me is really important, that gets overlooked a lot, at least on our end from the hybrid thing, is just having the ability um, to professionally switch a broadcast. Like we typically hard cut up most of the stuff. I mean, we'll do some PIP, but a lot of the stuff we're live cutting, and we're doing hard cuts to keep it engaging, so that it's not just this static shot of like a stage. And especially the long form content, like some of the CLE stuff where it's like 8 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, people are just going to zone out, bro, watching like, but I just bid something out for a group that does national conferences, and they sent me their gear set, and it's like stuff they bought at Best Buy, and they just set up a camera at like a front table, and they just kind of do the stage and they just push it out all day. And I was like, man, we just don't do that. I'm like, I can't even give you a tech to do that. It's just not what we do. And we were trying to talk through the process, and it was not like the value was not there for them yet. Like this is just like, they're like, it's fine. It's whatever. We don't care. We just need somebody in the room.
Yeah.
So we weren't a great fit for that, but it got me thinking about what that must look like to their attendees and those people that don't get that experience of like, even just like having the lower thirds, having the hard cut between the slide, like we're directing your attention on what to look at when you're getting multiple views of the room. Like that makes such a big difference, having a show actually be cut rather than just
Mhm.
a static camera at the back of the room. It's not that much more money. It doesn't cost you much more to do that stuff. So
And I mean, I think if you have a growth mindset, you just have to think like, why would I not want to do that?
yeah, why
I
would you
mean,
not want to look good?
yeah. I mean, I'm obviously like biased towards looking
Of
good because
course.
that's our business, but
It's also not our budgets, and I understand that for people, but I feel like that at some point, all of this stuff, like seriously, all of this, from the hybrid experience to like having good audio to all, like, I don't feel like this stuff is extra anymore. I feel like this is the expectation. And I feel like if you're not doing it, it's like exactly what we were telling people 5 or 6 years ago. Like, if you're not streaming, it's just you're done. Like, you have to figure out how to catch up. And all those people that were already streaming breezed through COVID, right? They breezed through that stuff. They did great. They crushed it. They came out the other end. They're still doing great. The people that didn't do it tried to play catch up and do whatever they could. Now they're back in person. They're realizing that they have to do streaming as well, because they're just people that this is how they interact with you. They're not going to come back in person. Um, and the world's changed, and so they're really way behind and trying to get caught back up and trying to figure out how their budgets are going to work and how do they monetize the streaming and how all those things. And I feel like the quality component of this, there is no longer this idea of like, well, that's just extra. It's extra to have a 2 camera 3 source switch. It's extra to have a little bit of lighting. I feel like you have to have that stuff now.
well, and I would say like the last point I would think of if I was trying to explain something why I felt like it was necessary is that you can't if it doesn't look good, you can't really use it to promote yourself. And so
That's
you've
right.
kind of wasted however much it costs to put on that event. You've wasted all of that content that you created during your event as possible marketing resources. Like you could clip out 20-second, 30-second clips. If you're having a full day conference, that's enough for a whole year if you like
Dude,
theoretically if you wanted to. And then you can just have to say, show up to our next conference. And
100%.
maybe you'll get 15 or 20% more attendees because they're like, oh, actually, that sounds really good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, or monetize whatever all of that content captured, whether it's for broadcast or whatever, all of that is an asset. That's a huge marketing asset. So like, even if you're not monetizing it, think of the opportunity cost, like you just said, to not capture that. Like, what are you giving up by not capturing that? It's huge, like monumental. You couldn't build a repertoire or a cache of that kind of content for what you can record it at the conference for. When are you ever going to get all those people in the same space, all those presenters, all that work, all of that content? It just doesn't. This is your time to do it, and it's just such a huge miss if you don't take the thing to do it. So,
I mean, this is like one last point I'll make is I was just reading about someone who's an online like they were doing conferences for people to do like small business and real estate stuff in San Antonio. And so about 4 years ago they came up with the idea of like, well, I'm going to start doing online content
mm,
to kind of drive people to those events. That the events were their main thing, and then they were going to create courses out of those events to sell.
hmm
Which so this is a little bit of a consumer model, but his YouTube videos have ended up being more lucrative than anything else because people will turn in to watch 10 minutes of advice on how to for their business. And I think that that's like
sure,
something that people don't realize is like because streaming video is such a big asset to all of these companies. I mean, if you're able to monetize it through I guess Meta or YouTube, I guess even X, like you can generate money that way. When I
sure.
worked for for Joel Osteen Ministries, they were really hesitant to get started on doing YouTube stuff because they didn't realize how um, big it would be, and they didn't realize, like, at a certain point, they had to start doing it because they like, people were earning so much money by just, like, packaging the stream
Their stuff. Oh,
and posting it online.
wow.
Like, YouTube contacted them because I mean, he's a pretty big guy, but and this isn't, like, 2013, 2014. People off of his like, were capturing his stream off of the website and then posting it to YouTube. Like, altogether, all the people who are doing it were making, like, 3 or $4 million a year.
My gosh.
And, they're like, "You can have that money, and you can file copyright, and then you can, like, put it online." And they're like, "Oh, well, that's a really easy way to generate" like, it's a very frictionless way to generate ad revenue for our ministry. And I don't know if that works for every association or every event,
Well,
but
I don't, and for the monetization portion of it, I don't know. And I don't know that even some of them are interested in that, but at least for like the idea of transparency and like what you're doing. And also like, I feel like in anything that you do, especially if we're going to talk about organizations or nonprofits, you have to look at your mission statement to guide you in any decision that you make. So like all these organizations, all of them, they're all mission driven. They all have some mission. Is there any mission statement that you can think of or that somebody would draw up that would be like, we are here to do X, 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 and X and provide X, but only if you show up in person?
I mean, not anymore, right?
No, it's like I have to go there or I don't get your services. Like I pay my dues or do all these things, but the only way that I get the benefit of learning these things is if I show up. You can't, there's no other way for you to get me this information. Like that to me is you're doing a disservice to your entire, member base or whatever you're trying to do, because it's just, it feels like it's secretive. It's like, oh, you got to be here in person to see it. Like that's not very transparent. Like find a way to get it
Yeah.
out there. So here's the last thing I'll say, because this to me is one of the most important and most often overlooked thing, and you hinted on it a little bit earlier, but um, I've seen this time and time again over the course of 20 years, and kind of doing this from the analog days of a 1402 mixer and a little recorder, or me and Brandon running out with XL1s and a data video switcher, but still managing the AV and stuff in the room. Is that when you work with these presenters and you create a little bit of a repertoire with them and you're cool with them and you're like, you get a little bit going and you get to talk to them and mic them up and get them up on stage, and they feel really confident about the job that you're going to do. And they've seen the quality of the programming that you help to produce, and they've seen other presenters present all day with no problems. You get a much better product at the end of the day for your association, for your organization, for your business, for whatever, because those people aren't worried about things going wrong. They're not worried about how they're going to look on stage. They feel confident. They trust the team that's behind them. They trust what's going to happen. And you get it's just, it elevates everything that's happening. It elevates you, it elevates your organization or your brand, it elevates their personal brand or what's going on with them. And again, I hate to throw a negative into this, but I feel like you're really doing a disservice by just ignoring that and being like, oh, well, we've got some speakers in the room and there's a microphone. It'll be on. Okay.
Yeah. It's kinda like the difference between, like, a normal gas station and going to Buc-ee's, you're like, which I mean, right, people will go out of their ways to go to a Buc-ee's and skip the 10 or 15 gas stations on a road trip that are not
Oh,
that.
look, my kids will only poop at Buc-ee's. Like I'm like, you got to go that bad? They're like, yeah, but I can wait till we get to a Buc-ee's. I'm like, all right, well, it's 30 minutes down the road. So good luck.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's it.
crazy, right?
It is, but I get it. Anyway,
But
well, that's
but
awesome.
it's 'cause it's an elevated product.
I mean, it just, look, it's all these things. Again, I think it all comes down to the end of the day that expectations are changing. You have to care about the product you're putting out. You have to care about the people that are there to consume your content. And if you don't, you're in it for the wrong reasons, and you're doing a disservice to everyone involved. So it doesn't have to be super expensive. You don't have to like go crazy, but you got to put in some effort. These things are not extra anymore. They're expected. But with that, I know we're a little over time, but you guys did a bang up job this first quarter. It was great. I know there's some cool stuff coming up that we'll get into. I know the guys are fixing to head out to Vegas for an event. I know we've got 2 overlapping events in Houston coming up, 3 back to back to back. and I think we're gonna go do a team building at an Astros game, which is gonna be fun.
That sounds awesome.
No, I'm excited for that. Although we lost 3-0 last night in the shutout opening day.
Not happy about that.
Hurt, man. Good pitching. But god dang, that was I don't know if we did any kind of like off-season batting practice because it looked like the same damn offense. It was pretty depressing. Anyway, we'll do that on the baseball podcast.
Okay. All
All right,
right.
buddy. Enjoy your
Have
weekend.
have a good weekend.
Later, bud.
Bye.
Bye.